Welcome to the My Opinion podcast, where two dynamic sisters dive deep into the world of women in entrepreneurship, sharing their own personal journeys, insights, and opinions.
From their wins to challenges, the highs and lows of their personal lives, and the hottest topics shaping our world, we are the fierce and fearless hosts that tackle it all.
Get ready for engaging conversations, inspiring stories, and thought-provoking discussions that celebrate the power and resilience of women.
Now, let's dive into an episode where we empower women entrepreneurs, one opinion at a time. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of My Opinion Podcast. I'm your host, Lily, and we also have Maya here, of course.
Hey guys, yeah.
Today we'll be talking about something that affects all of us in business, especially women entrepreneurs and women in business. And today it is burnout. So we're going to be talking about work burnout, emotional burnout, all that good stuff.
Way to just jump in there, Lil. Love it. So I'm really excited to talk about this. And I love how you said emotional burnout. We're coming back to that one. We are. But for me, burnout, this is something I really struggle with a lot. Because for me, burnout, in my opinion, is just when you go and there's like things that pop up for me that I start to realize now because I'm more self-aware that I'm burnt out, like things that I do. But definition, in my opinion, of burnout, obviously we could pull up Webster and look it up. For me, I think this is more personal than just pulling out a dictionary or something and looking it up, but feel free to do that if you like. But burnout for me is when you have just stretched yourself, you've burned the candle at both ends, as people say, right? The age-old saying, you've taken on so much and you just keep going and going. And I think all of us start to have specific tells that happen when you are burned out. You've just pushed yourself. And I see that in myself when I'm like, okay, just one more, if it's a domestic thing, if it's one more load of laundry, I got this. I'll stay up till 1:00 in the morning. Or if it's like just one more email for work, or if it's like just one more podcast episode today, like I'll push myself for those things, or just one more phone call. And then when I start to feel that, that's burnout for me, is when you're just like, and you're not excited. Like we just got done talking about your passion and your niche, right? And so when you're not passionate about what you actually are passionate about, that to me is burnout. What does it feel like for you? Like, what is burnout in your opinion?
For me, it's pretty similar. It can be a lot of emotions for me too, because social media is hard for me. So I got burnt out about this time last year with trying to post, not only doing what I love with thrifting and selling, and then I was trying to do something I don't love, which is social media. So that burned me out really quick, and I haven't really touched it since. I'm coming back up where I'm like, I do need to get back into it. It's going to help me. It's only going to be beneficial to me. And with that, I can do it on my terms. It's not, I need to post all these things to make money. This is a little different. So that was one of my biggest burnouts lately. But in general, for me, it's basically what you said. I'll push myself, let me go thrifting every single day, which is burning out for me because if I go every day, I have to bring my child and it gets old really quick. So then the stress of the week comes into the weekend when I normally do all my posting and a lot of my thrifting normally. And then I just get burnt out because you're tired from the week and it just compounds. So I think burnout physically and burnout mentally are two different things, because you can still be burnt out mentally, but keep physically working and trucking along, but it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah. That's why I said at the beginning when you mentioned emotional burnout, now you're talking about mental and physical.
Yeah.
That's like, we'll continue to talk about this through this episode. I think that's really interesting. And I totally understand social media, because for me, I had to create, because when I started really honing these different businesses, and I was like crazy with social media and I was putting so much effort into it, right? And you did the same thing. And I don't think that you should stop doing it. But what happens is I was like, I had to post every day. I had to go live like multiple times a week. I had to. And what I started to realize with that is I got so burnt out on not really a physical level from that, which I'm sure yours is different because you're actually posting physical items. So that can be physically taxing.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more like mental exhaustion because
Yeah.
having to engage with people that much, having to come up with content. Now I've scaled it back to where I'm like, I focus on meaty content, right? And that
Hmm.
started to take away the burnout and it gets me excited. Like I've pulled way back. I took a super break because I knew we were going to be relaunching this series and would have tons of great content to put out there. But also, I knew to be able to do this and also the other things that I do, I needed a break. And I think consistent posting instead of just every single day and just feeling that pressure, take that pressure off of you. But that's when I knew I was burnt out too. And I think a lot of you guys go through that as well is burnout from social media. And it's okay to take a break. Like you're not going to,
Yeah.
unless you're a TikTok person pulling in 23 million a year, and that's a whole other thing. Then that's your whole job. Then you know
Yeah.
what? You can pay someone to help you with the burnout. So it's all good. But I really like that you brought up social media because I think that's a big topic for everyone that does anything in
Hmm.
business that has to have a presence, but especially for entrepreneurs, people building a business, and us as women because we try to juggle so much. And I really like what you said about you going and thrifting and going out and feeling like you have to do it every day. But in order to be successful, you don't have to go all out every single day. That's
Yeah.
been a huge lesson for me with burnout.
Yeah. At first, I was constantly trying to do everything every day. And I realized, first of all, I can't do that. I'm like physically exhausted from trying to get everything done every day. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you just have to prioritize what that day really needs to get prioritized because you might have 1,000 things going on that day, but you still want to get something done in your work. And then you have other days where you have nothing going on. So you can get 10,000 things done in your
Right.
work. But I think it's hard because you think that's going to be every day. And so that's also how burnout happens because you're trying to do the same amount of work every single day, even though every day doesn't look the same.
Oh my God, I love this point. This is a good one. It's interesting because for me, I'm thinking about that and that really resonates with me because I've gotten so used to the grind, which is so
Hmm.
unhealthy, that if I have a day where, like you said, every something happens every day, right? But there
Yeah.
are days where it's, oh, I don't have for me in my business, right? I don't have 6, 7 conference calls today. I don't have to go into the studio. Like, wow, I only have one call or I only have to go set up an event today. And then I have this burnout mindset where I'm like, because
Yeah.
I didn't have good time management skills because I was always just going. Remember when I used to sleep with my 2 phones and my laptop? It was that bad. I mean, it was bad. So I think it's important that, again, you being vulnerable and sharing this is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
It I think this is a good thing to share because it's an evolution. I don't think anybody's born being like with their agenda being like,
Well,
I'm a great time
I
management
think a
person.
lot of I think a lot of people who are creative have the same issues.
Yes.
It's
Good
hard
point.
it's hard for us to put things on a timeline or time management, I don't know, spectrum.
No,
So,
this is really good. I wasn't even thinking like that. So that's really, why do you think that is? What's your opinion on that?
I don't know, I think my brain is working creatively, not I don't that not logically.
But I
I
think
mean,
there is something to that because I don't think you can like for instance, someone that's creating a painting or creating a music
mhm,
or creating you've created such beautiful pieces of furniture and if you're going to tell somebody, okay, that's why I think okay, this is a good point. You got my brain rolling now. Because think about all these shows that like you and I both love, like these
mhm,
makeup competition shows or fashion competition shows, which are like, we love those. And a lot of these creative people, when they get on these shows, sometimes they're better than a lot of the other people, but they
mhm.
might not make it past the first episode or whatever, or first competition or whatever happens, because this was a light bulb moment for me when you were bringing this up because they don't have effective time management.
Yeah. Hey, it's even like that with MasterChef and stuff.
No, this is all in the creative
Yeah.
space, right? And there's a lot of creative entrepreneurs out there. So I think this is a really good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think being around a lot of creative people, I think because I'm so logical and so like tactical, and I literally run a logistics company. So that's my jam. I think I see that, and you have to find a balance because I don't
Yeah.
think you want to be too regimented as a creative person because I think it can stifle your creativity, which is your business.
Yeah, and if you're gonna have a business, you need to be able there's things that are just not gonna be creative about it. So you just have to adapt, and I'm learning to deal with my time management skills, and I'm having people help me be accountable. My husband will be like, "I thought you said you were going to post all night. Why are you watching Sex and the City for the 5th time?" or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's true." But you also have to give yourself slack because some nights
Hmm.
you are just burnt out.
Hmm.
N Not just because you have bad time management skills, but maybe you had a really rough emotional day. So that's emotional burnout, not just physical. So you
Yeah.
just have to give yourself also some grace because you're not going to be perfect.
Yes. Something I've had to learn too. So we're going to come back to that. But yeah. So to round out time management, I can share a little bit more about how I evolved. But before I do that, I want to get your tips from a creative side because I think you and a lot of other people are always like, Maya, you're more creative than you realize. I get that, but I would not define myself as somebody who's going to go and do the things that you've done. I'm going to fly you here to do furniture for my house. I'm not going to do it myself. I just don't have those visions, but I know how to
Mhm,
execute. Like, I know I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to pick this up. This is what we're going to, it's
mhm.
logistical, right? So I think it's important that you share because you're in the midst of it. And one of the things that you shared, I think is really cool that your husband is like, hey, Lil, weren't you going to do this? And I think there's a nice balance there with those things.
Mhm.
So I think one thing you're talking about is like having kind of an accountability partner, and that can be your partner or a friend or someone.
Yeah.
Like I even say to you too, I'm like, okay, we're going to record at this time. And that works for our relationship because I'm very like time management and
Mhm.
very logistical. And you're like, I'm ready. Like, here we go.
Yeah.
And that can work really well. And maybe this is something I've seen this work very well for creative people too, and would love to get your take on this as well. But having business partners, because finding your complements
Yeah.
will help a lot with burnout and things that you maybe don't love so much. And we've
Yeah.
talked about that before on the show. But tell me a little bit about what kind of things are working for you. Like you said, accountability partner,
Mhm.
which is awesome. But what are some other things that you're noticing like, oh, this works for me? Because I think this is super helpful, especially for creative entrepreneurs. And
So mine are probably pretty specific. Besides, I'll make a list, just try to get at least a couple things crossed off during the day. Or like for me, my son naps like midday, so I'll try to take all my photos during that time. And then at night, I can just sit down, put a show on that I don't care about, and make my listings and things like that.
oh, I get to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has helped me a lot trying to break it up because if I try to do everything at once and say my son wakes up early or whatever, something happens, I just feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't get anything done then. When in reality, I did. My time was just cut short. So those are like realities I have to live with time management also being thrown in there.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to like not rush and get everything done within a 2-hour time frame. Obviously, if you're at home doing your own business, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to need to probably have a timeline like you would at any job. Okay, I need to get there by 9. By 10, for me, it was by 10, I'm opening the store. 11, I need to do my check, all like how you would be at any
Back at
job.
retail days when you had like a regimented
Yes.
schedule. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah.
So for me, if I didn't have anybody to count on, or not count on me, but anybody that needed me throughout the day, and I could just do whatever, I would probably have a much more, this is what I'm going to
Regimented.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would help me because, yeah, or else I would just be like, yeah, I'll do it in an hour or
Yeah.
I'll get around to it.
Yeah. So it's self-accountability and also having like accountability partners.
Yeah.
That's important. Yeah, I really love what you said about that too, because that's literally something I was going to share. So that's what changed the game for me
Mhm.
was programming myself in a way where I was like, because I've been working from home since I was 22, which that was like
Yeah.
way 2010 work remote. That was not unheard of, but it was unheard of. It's not like now where it's, oh, I'm going to an office. Nobody wants to do that anymore. The pandemic changed things, as we know. So for me, I didn't operate that way, right? Like I'm this 22, 23-year-old that's got all this freedom to work at home. But what kept me in line was that I had such a heavy workload because I was so
Yeah.
young and I was doing the job of so many people. So through that and burning myself out because I was just working all the time instead of speaking up, which is a huge mistake, and
Yeah.
saying, this is a job of 3 to 4 people, which it was because when I left, that's what I was replaced with. And I have whole episodes on that. Yeah. You
Yeah.
remember me going through all
Yeah.
this. I got sick. You will physically get sick. Like I am the embodiment of physical burnout, like
Yeah.
from that aspect, which is probably why I don't physically burn out. That's not my go-to anymore. To your point of emotional, mental, and physical, we'll talk about that in a second. But for me, it was once I was able to regiment myself and get to a place, it was really my next corporate job. And then I've
Mhm.
carried this through. And I think that's why I was able to work for myself. I am able to work for myself because I treated it, I had to create a separate space. I had
Mhm.
to go into the office. I remember working for someone when I was at David's, and they told me they would literally, he was my boss for a little while. He would put, because he was really not, he's a super creative type. And so his time management, this is why I love that we're talking about this. His time management was difficult, really difficult for him. So
Mhm.
he would go into his office and do an open and close sign. He had to do it. He had
Yeah.
to do that. And I actually took that with me. I didn't have to go that extreme, but I got where he was coming from. And so having a space where I could, this is a part of time management, you have to have a space where you can leave your stuff and walk away from it and come back to it. And
Yeah.
that was a game changer for me because sleeping with a laptop and a BlackBerry and an iPhone was not really healthy for many reasons. But because you're always dialed in, to your
Mhm.
point, you have to unplug. So that was a huge game changer. Schedule blocking. I know you laugh a little bit at me sometimes because I literally, for this podcast, even I send us calendar holds, and
Yeah.
we're sisters. Like we talk every day, but still, if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer for me too. Like I never have to like, and if I know I've got to send a bunch of emails, I will literally block out 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. email.
Mm.
I and it again, game changer. And you brought up an excellent point because this used to mess me up really bad too. And I think it's great advice that if something comes up, like for you, it's your child, right?
Yeah.
Or different things that can go on at the house because you've got lots of things going on there. Dogs,
Yeah.
husband, right? Things can happen. But for me, if it's like a phone call or an emergency happens with an event or
Mhm.
whatever, right? Because I'm managing multiple things, I can't let that throw me off my game.
Yeah.
Because it used to, I'd be like, oh no, I didn't get my 2 hours of email and this and that. Nope. Then I block another time. Then I block another time for it. And I say, okay, what email has to go out now and what email can wait a few days? Like, it's really hard for me at night because I still will be like, oh God, I forgot this one. And I'm like, no, I'll go to that calendar. I'm telling you guys, it works. Go to that calendar, pop it in that calendar first thing in the morning. Now, I'm not a morning person, so I don't really kick off work until 9, if I'm being honest. But I start answering emails about 7-ish, 7:30-ish. But that's not like fully ready for the day. I'm just being transparent. That's who I am. I'm a night person, clearly. So I'll be like, oh God, I forgot to email Lily. I will literally put it in my phone for 7:30 or 8 a.m. So it'll pop me up. It's the first thing I do. And that relieves my anxiety completely for that night. And I'm managing my time. So anyway, hot tip. But those are those things that should change for me. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge thing. So another thing I want to talk about too is I want to go back. We were jumping around and that's totally cool. Is self-care. So I feel like this term is way overused. What do you think about self-care? I think it's important, but I think
Yeah.
it's misunderstood and it's overused. But what do you think about it?
I think since COVID, everybody is very big into self-care
Okay.
because for like months, that's all we like did was we did our facials
Yeah.
and at home facials, whatever. So yeah, I do think self-care is that term is overused, but it is important because you don't have a boss looking at you every day telling you, wow, you look really tired. Do you want to use some of your PTO? No, you're not going to have that. So you're going to have to look at yourself and be like, I'm burnt out. I need a
Right.
break.
I didn't
Yeah.
even think about it like that. That's why I love when we talk about stuff like this and do this because I didn't think about it like that. For
Yeah.
me,
If you have a good boss, they'll tell
I was
you
gonna say
you look like
caveat there.
crap.
Caveat. Hopefully you have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other aspect of self-care. Maybe we'll do an episode on that is if you don't have a good boss,
Yep.
what to do when you don't. Yeah. But yeah, you don't have a boss sitting there either burning you out or
Yeah.
telling you that you're burnt out. So, one way or the other. And you know what? Actually, now that you say that, in my opinion, you will know either way because if you are working for somebody or with somebody or whatever it is that is not healthy for you, you will feel, you'll like, oh, I
Yeah.
need to take care of myself. So, you know, either way, to your point.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody's going to sit there and be like, okay, girl, you need to kick your feet up on the
Yeah.
couch, watch a show, go for a walk, go out and have lunch with your friend, whatever it is that gets you re-energized. That's my I have such a split feeling about self-care because probably one, because I don't do it all the time, but two, because I feel like the term, to your point, it was overused. And like when
Mhm.
we have that image in our mind, it's us with a face mask on and we're drinking a glass of wine and we're on the couch. Hashtag COVID days. So that's like the image we
Yeah.
have in our head. And that's not really what it means. Self-care is how you beautifully put it, like looking at yourself, being self-aware
Mhm.
and knowing that, okay, like you need to unplug, you need to take
Yeah.
care of yourself. And that is personal to every single person. I don't think self-care looks exactly the same for any two people. I
No.
think it's all different,
Yeah.
totally different. And I think that's where we need to change the conversation. I think some people have done a really good job of that.
Mhm.
But in my opinion, like self-care is exactly what it sounds like, and we've glamorized it a little bit. No, it's as simple as, you know what? I'm closing my computer today at
Yeah.
5 o'clock. Or I'm closing my computer today completely. I'm taking it out of office day. Those are self-care days for me because I'm on every single day.
Yeah.
And I know you are too, especially as a mom, there's so many different roles that we play here, right? And we have to take on. You don't get a day off from being mom.
No.
That's a huge role. So how are you gonna take care of yourself, right? So
Yeah.
if that means during his nap time one day, you kick up your feet, watch a show,
Yeah.
eat what you like, whatever that looks like for you. And I think that's a conversation that we need to continue having on many platforms, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not just having a spa day. It's literally what is going to fill your soul back up so you can feel re-energized. So this is something that we talked about a little bit already, but I just want to skim over it again is building a support network. You already talked about it. Like
Yep.
you have your support. And I think that's really important. And that's something that oh God, I feel that. So I'm really proud of you for that because having a partner that's like telling you and hey, either way, right? With time management or
Mhm.
with self care and burnout and all of this that we're talking about, I think having a support system is really important. But I
Yeah.
think the network can be more like for me, it's not just my friends, it's also like my therapist, like
Yeah.
people like that. But I think you have to build that too. How do you think that you've built your support like network and group? Because that kind of keeps us
Mhm.
from burning out too, right? Checking in and having that community
Yeah.
in all aspects.
Yeah. So mine is mainly family. I follow a lot of people on social media and all that, but like I said before, I'm not great at social media, so I haven't really connected with people. Just like I think I can. It just that takes a lot of mental and emotional connection too that
Hmm.
I've been pretty burnt out with in my personal life.
Hmm.
So it's just hard to try to widen that to even people you don't know or even people that are going to criticize and judge you or not understand you. So for me, mine has mainly been my family, you guys. Fortunately, I have a lot of people in our family that Every time I go thrifting, I'm like, "Oh, what'd you get? Did you find anything cool?"
Yeah.
So I have a lot of support there. You guys are really awesome. Always want to know. I saw
Yeah, I
this.
do. Yeah, we do.
I saw this video. Somebody sent me this video. And it was like, if you grew up in a fashion show household, I think I sent you that too. And
Mhm.
so it cracks me up because every time I go thrifting, Caliber, my husband, he's like, "All right, show me what you got."
I love it.
'Cause I already know you want to show me. So even
Yeah.
if it doesn't fit me, I'll be like, "You like this?" So I
Mhm.
think it's as simple as that's my support. You
Mhm.
don't have to have, if you're in a tech world, you're a woman in business in the tech world, you don't necessarily have to feel like you have to have 10,000 people in the tech world that are rooting for you. As long as you have people who, they don't necessarily have to understand what you're doing, but if they're encouraging you, proud of you, excited to see you win, not fail, I think that's the best thing you can have for support. You don't necessarily have to have 10,000 colleagues doing the same thing as you and you guys are all collaborating.
Mhm.
It's as long as you have somebody who's rooting for, even just one person that's rooting for you, telling you can do it and you're doing a good job and they're here to support you. I think really all you need. Some people don't even have one person and they're doing amazing.
Yeah.
So think about if you have one person in your corner, you can do great things. So you just have to keep that in mind. You don't have, it doesn't look the same for everybody. So like support does not look the same for everybody.
I totally agree with you. I agree 100%, and I think that you brought up a really good point with having these area specific type groups too, because I think people
Hmm.
think they need to have, to your point, like, oh, if I'm like running a tech company, like you said, we're just going to use that example because you brought it up and it's a good one. I need to surround myself with a million tech people. That's
Yeah.
actually not really what you want to do. I have girlfriends in the tech space. I have girlfriends in the HR space. I have girlfriend. I have attorney girlfriends, several, and we call each other all the time and cheer each other on and like root for each other. I'm telling
Yeah.
you now, in this point in my career, businesses, things like that, I have more support now than I've ever had, and I don't think I have one person in my ecosystem that does exactly what I do.
I also think that helps you grow because you're sharing different experiences with people.
Mhm.
And whether you know it or not, you might be educating people every day on what you're doing and you might be helping them with their business because you guys are not the same.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I found. That's so insightful, Lily, because I did not realize that, and I just honestly, I woke up in the past year
Hmm.
realizing that as I'm having these, because I'm having much deeper relationships with women for obvious reasons. One, I've been doing a podcast for women for several years now. That's a duh moment, Maya. This is 4 years right in the making.
Hmm.
And we're relaunching this and we're helping women in business and entrepreneurship. But beyond that, though, as I've grown my business, it's really interesting. And I want to do an episode on this so you guys tell us if we do it, but it's really interesting who supports you and who doesn't. So
Hmm.
that's a whole episode. We're gonna do an episode on that in the future. But building that support network, you're spot on. You actually get more because here's the thing. When you've got people that are in business, it doesn't really matter what type of business you're
Hmm.
running or what they're in because you're going to face similar challenges, like
Yeah.
from a 50,000-foot view.
Yep.
Okay, like my friends that are attorneys, I'm not going into court every day, but I definitely understand what it's like to work with challenging people or you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like things like
Yeah.
that. And then with my people who are in tech, they deal with certain technical challenges that are way above my like head, but I can empathize with it because I've hired people to do that and some of them are my friends. And I really like what you said too because if you have one person cheering for you, count yourself lucky because especially early in this journey, not everybody's rooting for you. And
Yeah.
so one
They're not going to,
person,
not everybody's going to understand.
right?
And that's okay.
And that's okay. But if you have one person that's a cheerleader for you, I mean, you're good as gold. And when I started this journey, I really couldn't say there was anybody that was like my cheerleader. They were strangers. They were you guys listening. Like, that's who it was. And now you guys aren't strangers. Like you're my people who listen and you're my friends and
Hmm.
like it's evolved. So it's cool to watch the process. But if you like you said, if you got one person in your corner and if you got a couple, like rock and roll, hold on to those people. So I
Yeah.
agree. I think that's really cool. Okay. So this is a good one. And you talked about it already.
Mhm.
Realistic goals. This
Mhm.
one. Okay. This is like you said, time management is your like Achilles heel. I feel like you've evolved so much with time management. It's cool to watch. But this is my Achilles heel. How are you with setting realistic goals?
It's just like time management. I'm not great. I feel like if you're not really good with time management, it's hard to set realistic goals because you don't realize how much you can actually accomplish or get done within a certain amount of time. So
Mhm.
I'm constantly setting these goals that I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do that. But in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then I'll tell my husband, and I'm not saying you can't do it, but don't you think you should maybe try half of that for,
Like
you know what I
baby
mean?
step it. Yeah.
Right. So it is hard when you don't have good time management skills. I think you can definitely set realistic goals when you have time management skills. And when you don't have time management skills, you can probably set realistic goals too. Those are like two of my hardest things I need to get past, because then we come back to this burnout.
Mhm.
You set these goals, you don't meet them because you can't manage your time. And then you're burnt out because you're like, why am I not as successful as I wanted to be, expect to be, need to be? But you're burning yourself out because you can't actually get those things done in the time frame you have set. So then maybe you're not physically burnt out, but then I get emotionally burnt out and I normally break down. And I'm like, why am I not getting the results I want? And it's
Right.
because of not setting realistic goals.
Yeah. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I can definitely see your point about time management being correlated to realistic goals.
Hmm.
Because when you don't have a good grasp on your timing, you're going to think you can go either way, really. You can either think that you're going to achieve all of these things and go, I can build a whole house in a week, something
Yeah.
crazy like that. Or you may undercut yourself and think, okay, I got to block all this because I do this.
Mhm.
I think it's going to take me all this time to get through certain projects or things like that. And then I'm like, oh, actually, so I'll block that time, my good old calendar block. I'll block that time and then I'll realize it only took me like 45 minutes, which is empowering.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
And I thought it was going to take me 2 hours. That happens now, though, to your point. That did
Yeah.
not happen back in the day. Now that I've learned time management, I'm like, okay, I'm blocking. So those are nice surprises, but most of the time, it's setting these crazy goals where I try to, for instance, I try to do 5 or 6 interviews in a day for my other podcast, or even when I was doing interviews on this podcast, which we're going to do again. Little plug. Thank you guys. We've already had emails flowing in, so we will get there, we promise. But I think, and then I would burn out
Yeah.
because that's a lot of energy to put into something, right? And now I've learned to sprinkle those things out. And so I had really unrealistic goals with that. And I think the thing that realistic goals does for you too is it makes you feel like, in my opinion, that you've accomplished a whole lot that day when
Yeah.
you just set those realistic, like you mentioned, making a list. And I think that I do that every single day. I'm like, this is everything I need to accomplish. And then the prioritization. And I think that is really helpful because whenever I cross something off a list, do you feel this way? I feel, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like
Yes.
win, cha-ching. Like I'm really pumped about it. So
Hmm.
sometimes I'll even just write down, people have different opinions on this, but I like it. Like I'll write down stuff like walk the dog, because I have two.
Yeah.
Walk the dogs. I took this off because people think different things about it, but I used to put down like meditate because I like to do a 5 to 10 minute meditation in the morning, things like that. But honestly, to get myself in I don't do that as much anymore, but simple
Mhm.
things I do put on there, like laundry, I still put on there because it's a chore, it's a
Yep.
task. And I've even gone this crazy with my time management, Lily, that I do columns now. So it's like personal and
My gosh.
business.
Yeah.
And then I like, yeah,
Well,
but
I understand. I always have a running list on my fridge, and it
yeah,
feels good to cross things off. And some things are so small. Caliber would be like, let's say do laundry. I like we're gonna do that. I'm like, I know, but it makes me feel good to
It's a
it.
realistic
Like,
goal,
yeah,
and it helps pull you out of that burnout, right? Like when you cross it off.
yeah, because it doesn't matter if you were already gonna do it. If it was in the back of your head, you're already gonna do it. If you put it down and you cross it out, you did something. Yes, you already knew you were gonna do it, but
I think there's
it's
something
something
to it,
small.
right? Like mentally and emotionally, that you're doing that because it's showing your mind, your body, your soul, all of that together. Like on the days where you feel like you don't do anything, we do something every single day, right? Because I think when we don't write some of those things down, or however you want to document it, or give yourself that sense of accomplishment to
Mhm.
pull yourself out of burnout or to avoid burnout, I just feel like those, like when you visually look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, I did all these things and I also did all these things for work. And I think it can be really healthy. I understand people's mindset where they're like, okay, if you put meditation down or working out down, like those are supposed to be things for you and it can feel like a chore. And I get that. So maybe you
Yeah.
need to figure that out for yourself. I'm not going to put drink a glass of wine on there because I'm just going to do that anyway, probably. But, or I'm not going to put eat on there or things like that. That's pretty
Yeah.
basic. But if you want to, why not? It's your
Well,
list. It's your way to
I've
feel
even see
accomplished.
people that take the list to another step where they have like calendars and it shows like by the hour and they put down up, make my bed. Some people do it that crazy. And I think that would be too much pressure for me. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't make my bed at 7:05 this morning. I made it at 8.
Like, I think you're so right. I think when I see those lists, I'm like, I think I'm really super
I know.
detailed. No, they take it to a whole different level. But if that works for you and you look at your list, because for me, I have to balance the overwhelm because
Hmm.
overwhelm for that equals burnout for me, right? Like we talked about very early on.
Yep.
So I have to put the things on there that feel good when I check them off, but also need to be accomplished. So it's about balancing the two together.
Yep.
What needs to be accomplished, I can just put the things on there that make me feel good, but because then you get nothing done.
Yeah.
Then there's no point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Like it has to be really personalized and it has to be for you because yeah, if I had 7:05 make your bed, like that would freak me out.
Yeah.
7:06 brush your teeth. But for some people, people have these lists.
Some
It's
people do.
interesting.
Yeah.
And if you're one of them, kudos to you. But for me, it's more about the things that I accomplish in a day and my calendar time blocking is that works for me.
Yeah.
That's what works for me though. And you have to, I do understand people that do that stuff, but I'm like, feel
I wish that
overwhelming.
could be me, but that's just not. I just can't.
You gotta find, but that's what we're talking about, finding your realistic goal with that.
Yeah.
That's another goal. Okay, so this ties into this as well. And then I want us to talk about emotional, mental, and physical burnout because I love that you defined all of that's beautiful. Okay, so it's obvious embracing flexibility, and we
Hmm.
touched on this a little bit already. Like I said, if I got a call or something threw me
Yeah.
off on my time block, it would throw me off. And I think embracing flexibility is really helpful because you stop being so hard on yourself. Being hard on yourself is a part of burnout. That's an emotion that I get. Do
Yeah.
you get that too? Or what are some of the things that you experience when you're not allowing yourself to be flexible and not giving yourself grace? Like you said,
Hmm.
that's what flexibility means to me, giving myself some grace. Like it's okay. What does that look like for you?
For me, it just I get burnt out when I start to be like we said, those people that like this make my bed 7:05. That's not me. I have to be flexible. I have a little human I'm running around after all day, so I have to be flexible. If he gets up at 5:45 in the morning, guess what? I'm up at 5:45.
Right.
So my day, I have to be flexible because guess what? I might not want to stay up till midnight posting all my photos or
Right.
setting offers, doing all this stuff because I was up at 5:45.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be flexible. It's just in work, you get call outs. When you work at a real job, you have to be flexible. Real job, that's not what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like an actual corporate
Yeah.
franchise, whatever. But you have to be flexible there because you're having call outs, weather, all these things. But when you're at home, you have a lot of, or at home, your personal business, you have a lot of, you're going to have a
In
lot of extra
interruptions,
emotional. Yeah,
distractions.
you're going to, I feel like you're going to have a lot more emotional, interpersonal situations that are going to happen than you would at work because you're not always going to be friends with people at work. Yeah, you might talk to people, get along with them, but if you work from home, you have home office, your business is at home, you're going to have interpersonal issues. You have a family at home, things are not going to go exactly like you think they are. So you have to be flexible, whether that means for you go renting a space. I know a lot of people rent space outside their home. So that can look like flexibility for you, or setting your family and being like, "Look, during these hours, you don't interrupt me if you have the luxury of doing that." But yeah, you have to be flexible when you work for yourself, when you're starting a business, getting it off the ground, in the middle, all throughout. You have to be flexible because it's not going to look how you think a job looks.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is an important one on burnout for sure because
Hmm.
this is a real Achilles heel for me too. These are probably my two at the end here, which is interesting how that I wrote this out because I'm like I did my like strengths and it's interesting, but and how I wanted to approach this. But this is also naturally how people talk about burnout. So it's interesting. Maybe there's
Hmm.
something to this flow. Maybe there's something to this. But for me, flexibility was like that would be one of my triggers where I would know I was burnt out.
Yeah.
So, for instance, like to your point, if there was an emotional involvement at home, right? Like my significant other or the dogs were this still will I have to be much more patient. While we
Hmm.
were recording this, my dog turned on the TV. Yes, my dog does this. It's the craziest
Yeah.
thing. Yes, they're small, but you have to be like flexible. Like that used those types of things used to them barking or my partner coming home or like someone being too loud next door. Things like that used to really just set me off because I
Hmm.
was got the time management down. I was I was too regimented. Now I know flexibility and I can't get upset about the things that I cannot control. I can only
Yep.
control so much. And I
Yep.
think that's an important lesson with flexibility. This one was a tough one for me. I'm a Virgo. I'm very regimented. We like schedules. We like things to happen at certain times. And we do everything that we possibly can to organize things. But stuff happens. It's life.
Yeah.
And I really like what you said too, though, about like it's about building those boundaries so that you can avoid it as much as possible. So when these
Mhm.
things do happen, you're able to have flexibility. And that's something I had to really learn is put boundaries in place with either your loved ones or yourself, creating that
Yeah.
space. I go outside of the home and I work outside of the home 1 to 2 days a week. I started doing that. And people ask me sometimes, like, you built a home office. Like, I have my own little podcast studio. Like, why do you go record other places sometimes? Why do you do? Because I mentally need to. I need to. And I need to do it not only for my mental health, but to keep that flexibility in check for myself too,
Yeah.
because getting out of your space that you're in all the time, I think is really healthy, but it also alleviates some of the stressors where I can just go in and
Yeah.
focus. And
Hmm.
I think that helps balance the flexibility instead of being frustrated about these interruptions. So being home, I can appreciate and working from home, but then also I needed
Yeah.
that balance and that interaction.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to define for us what is emotional burnout? Because I've never heard someone say that before.
I don't know if there's a definition, but
What is your definition? Yeah.
well,
What's your
when,
opinion, of course?
what's my opinion? My opinion on emotional burnout is I try to put all these things on me. It goes back to the setting realistic goals. When you're setting unrealistic goals for yourself, you're going to get really hard on yourself, down on yourself, negative towards yourself when you don't accomplish those unrealistic goals. And it starts to, for me, it starts to manifest in my relationships.
Mm,
I start to get short, or I notice that I'm really just things are starting to emotionally get to me when they shouldn't. Like little things. Like I ask you to go pick up something and you pick up two of the three things. I possibly could just cry. I don't know.
yeah.
Like it can manifest a lot of ways for me emotionally, which end up being physical because then you start crying but that happens with burnout for me. And it's more so emotional since I do a lot of it. I work from home. Some of it's physical because I'm like bending over to take the pictures. So sometimes that will get to me. I'll be like, I physically cannot stand here tonight and take these pictures. It's
Right.
just, I'm just so uncomfortable. That doesn't happen as much. But with the emotional and mental, sometimes it's just, I'm not as successful as XYZ that I see on Instagram. Why do they?
Oh, that's a mental one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that will make me emotional because sometimes somebody will be like, oh, I've been doing this for 8 months. And I'm like, I've been doing this for twice as long and I'm not where you are.
Mhm.
One, you just have to step back and be like, look, they're on social media every single day. Like they're doing all this. So they might not be more actually monetarily successful, but in visibility, they're more successful. So with me, sometimes that helps just trying to put that in perspective. And also thinking, look, I haven't actually given it my all with social media like they have. Or
Yep.
so
Back to those realistic goals for you. Yep. Mhm.
yeah, so it's like, really? They're successful because it looks like they're putting the energy into that, and guess what? You really aren't, so you can't really get upset about it. But, when
Yeah.
emotions take over, that's hard to remember.
Yeah.
Not just because they are better, they might not even be better than you, or it's not a competition. I have to tell myself that all the time. It's not a competition. We all want to see each other do well. And guess what? You're doing something that they're not. Even if you can't see it, you are.
Yeah.
And at first, that would overwhelm me because I was like, there's 50,000 people doing what I'm doing. Even when I go out, you can tell who's doing the same thing as you. And that would stress me out. But then I'd still find things that were worth time for me. And so I just started learning just because they are doing something similar, they're not doing the exact same thing.
Mhm.
And there's room for all of us. So that was what was emotionally burning me out, was comparing myself,
Oh,
and
yeah.
also comparing myself not only to others, comparing myself to myself. Because when I used to work in retail and I was just go, and now I'm like, I get tired after, I don't know. I don't know how to put that into words compared to working retail, but I get tired faster and I compare myself to my old self a lot. And we're aging, we're growing, and
Aging. Give a break. Anyway. Aging. Talk to me in 10 years. Oh, wait, you will be.
but
I know
so
what you mean, though. It
yeah.
changes. It changes. But you bring up a really good point again. I know I say this a lot, but you do because I didn't think about comparison, which is a
Mhm.
whole other episode, but I've talked about this before on the show. So I really think this is interesting. Comparison is not only the thief of joy, we know that, but comparison creates burnout.
Yep.
And I think it's interesting that we all do this. We all compare ourselves.
Yeah.
And you work so hard going to thrift and find clothing, but you are aware that social media is something that you've been in and out of and it's
Mhm.
not your strongest suit. But I think it's really important that you keep in mind that you're strong in these XYZ other areas, right? Like you're
Yeah.
really diligent about, as I'm looking at you, I'm looking at all the clothes that you've gotten. Like you're really diligent about the clothing that's listed, the things that you're doing, I mean, you're always
Mhm.
propelling yourself forward. So just because somebody's presenting themselves a certain way, don't allow that to get to you mentally and emotionally because that
Yep.
adds to burnout. That's a huge point because that added to my burnout, especially on social media or
Mhm.
in my building process. And sometimes I will just be like, nope, I don't want to go look at this today because I'm aware. Like now I know what emotional burnout is. I learned something today that that's when I'm feeling emotionally burnt out. I can't
Mhm.
engage with that stuff. And I can't engage with the old version of myself too. That's
Yep.
really a huge thing that you're talking about as well. That's a huge lesson because I used to, for me, this is my emotional burnout, I guess, is tied to physical. And I didn't even realize I'm
Mhm.
having an aha moment listening to you because for me, I can't physically do the things that I used to do. I used to run at the gym in the morning or in the evening, then travel all over the place. And like, I physically have been in two horrific car accidents. I am healing. So
Yep.
I need to give myself some grace. And I've done that and I'm doing alternative things that I'm comfortable with. Okay, a walk, that's what I can handle now.
Yep.
And controlling more of my diet and doing things like that. And I didn't realize how tied in this was because for me, that creates burnout for me when I start to be like, okay, it's time to
Mhm.
do this. It's time to get back to that. Like pushing all of these things on myself instead of just saying, you know what? I've physically been through some things. I'm still moving. I'm still kicking. I'm still here. And
Mhm.
every day I'm a different version of myself and moving forward. And that's really all that matters.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I said at the beginning of this episode, I don't really think I have physical burnout, but I do have physical burnout. And it's
Yeah.
when I'm pushing myself and comparing myself to others because I'm not a runner anymore. I can't physically do it. So that doesn't mean that just because I'm not running every single day or doing that doesn't, it's just a different chapter in my life. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And unfortunately, with physical burnout, it's not going to manifest like emotional burnout. I feel like I can check myself with and be like, God, I don't know why I'm other than female things going on. I
Yes,
can
we
be
all
like,
know.
I
We
can be
all
like,
know. We've all been there. We all are there. Yes, we know.
I can be like, God, I really don't know why I'm like, why did that specific thing bother me so much? Or,
Oh, good.
but
Yeah.
with physical, it's not always easy for me to identify because it can look like I'm sick. I got a cold. I don't really feel like going on a walk today. Or so those, I feel like, that's God, why am I feeling like that? But with emotional, sometimes it's easier for me to identify burnout because I'm like, God, what? Like, why did that was nothing? Why did what that person say affect me so much?
Mhm.
So I think emotional for me is easier to identify than physical burnout.
I agree 100%. And I can see that. I see that for you. And I think a lot of people are going to connect with that too. For
Hmm.
me, physical burnout, I don't know. Like I shared, I'm still working my way through physical burnout because I was this super active person for a really
Yeah.
long time. So I'm still working my way back and what makes sense for me and just accepting that. But for me, it's mental. So
Yeah.
mental burnout for me, I know that very well now.
Yeah.
Emotional, I just, I don't even know. That one I'm not as in tune with. You're way more in tune with that kind of emotional aspect. And I think that's a superpower for sure. And for me, it's mental though. Like when I start to just, for me, I used to overcomplicate this, but really, I will blank. I like
Yeah.
totally blank out. I will be writing emails. I will be talking on the phone and I can't, I've done this with you. I've been on the phone. I'm like, I literally can't formulate a sentence. Like, I got to call you tomorrow. So for me, I feel really in tune with my mental. And I think it's because I'm so mentally engaged from the moment I wake up
Yeah.
till the evening. Not to say that you aren't, or those of you who are listening aren't, you may relate to me, but I think it's interesting that we're defining it in these three ways because I do think that you tend to be more in tune with one of these. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It's just, it's different because all day I'm dealing with emotions. I have a toddler, so
Hmm.
he doesn't understand his emotions and he feels them really big. So for me, emotional burnout is rough because I'm constantly dealing with a lot of emotions. And then if you have a spouse or a partner, you also have to deal with their emotions who they might handle things completely different than you. And then you have to deal with them dealing with the other with
Hmm.
your emotions, your load that you're putting on them. And if you have kids, then you have other added mental loads and emotional loads
Hmm.
that are happening. So you have all these things, and if especially if you stay home with your kids and you're trying to run a business, it's like you're dealing with so many different emotions and so many different personalities that sometimes by the end of the day, just from that day, I'm burnt out.
Of course you are. Yeah. And I'm sure so many of you guys listening to this can relate to what Lily is talking about. And I'll be honest, I feel a little emotionally drained just being like, wow, that's because it's a lot. It's a lot. I don't have
Hmm.
kids. I'm married. So, you know, that's a lot in itself. And you throw kids into the mix and you're right. I think you described it really well. The different type, and then that person processing that person's emotion, and then you're processing that. And so
Hmm.
it's a lot of emotion. So I can definitely see why that would be quite heavy. And then you add all of these other aspects on. So yeah, burnout it's real, guys. It's a
It
real thing.
is. Hmm.
And I think we've expressed both a little bit. Like you said earlier, you were like, sometimes I'm a little bit short with people. Sometimes I totally relate. And I think a lot of you guys will relate to this too. I totally relate to someone bringing home our partner, whomever it is, only bringing home two things that you asked for out of three. And it's like the world has ended and it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not. You could just run back out and get it.
No, but that's like the last straw for the
But
day.
it's,
You're like,
yeah,
nope, I'm done.
you're like, I asked you to do this. Are you kidding me? I am with you. It's interesting because I feel more mental than emotional most of the time, but emotional happens as well. Depends on the days. But for me, it's consistently mental and staying checked into that because I'm like, okay, once hit that burnout, like I'm starting to go like screeching tires on the I know it's time for me to literally unplug for the day, like literally
Mhm.
shut the laptop and zone out and whatever that is, read a book, watch a ridiculous show, whatever that means, sit in the backyard with my dogs, whatever it is, just zone out. That's what I need to do because I'm
Mhm.
out of it. But I do a lot of those things too. Like I'll snap over really silly things. And that's a big tell for me is the
Yep.
snapping where I'm just like, my nerves are just like shot. I'm like, okay, laptop closes, phone goes on silent. It's time to do that. But I think everybody's a little bit different.
Mhm.
But I think everybody can connect with us being like short or
Mhm.
emotionally exhausted, mentally exhausted, physically. And I think it's just really important that you listen to that, listen to yourself and be
Yeah.
aware of that. Whew. This is a good episode, like talking about
Yeah.
burnout. I've never really talked about this intensely before. And now I have these 3 reference points. So anything else you want to
Yeah.
add, Lil, that we didn't share about burnout? Any last tips? Because you've got a whole different perspective being a business owner and a mom.
I don't have any tips. If you guys have any tips. No, just kidding. No, but I
You've
mean,
given so many tips. You've given so
yeah.
much information today. I think it's been great. Yeah.
No, but we would love to hear how you guys deal with all of these different burnouts, if they all happen at once for you guys, or
Oh my God, if they all happen at once. Oh my gosh, please let us know. We'll send you a bottle.
I think that's called a mental breakdown.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I thought you were pulling out another term. I was like, God, Lily's really on a roll today. Yeah, I think that is called a mental
Yeah.
breakdown, which that's a whole other
Yes.
episode, but I feel like I've had one a couple times. So that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I do. I really feel like I had one in my 20s when I was just, you remember visiting me in the hospital. And I've shared
Mhm.
this on the podcast before. I was so burnt out from my corporate job. That was
Yep.
physical, emotional, and mental. To your point. I know we're
Yep.
laughing, but it's actually true because I just collapsed.
Yeah, it happens.
So you have to pay attention, like
Yeah.
pay attention. So remember this and pay attention to your tells.
Self-care, self-care, self-care.
Self-care. No, but seriously, whatever that looks like for you. And I think
Yes.
of it as basically plugging yourself back in, re-energizing yourself, whatever that
Mhm.
is for you. It just looks different for every single person. It really
It
does.
does.
And I
It
think
does.
paying attention to your tells, as I call them, like
Yeah.
Lily and I, we like to snap a little bit. Like, just do what I said. Leave me alone. I feel like a lot of women out there can relate to that though, because we're very patient. We're very patient. We're very, very patient when we've had it.
Yep.
So listen to that.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Lil. Thanks for an awesome episode.
Yeah. Thanks for listening and
Yeah.
talking.
And thanks for enlightening us about physical, emotional, and mental burnout. And hopefully this is helpful for you guys.
Yeah.
And we'll see you back on the next episode.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the My Opinion podcast. Make sure to follow us on all major social media platforms at My Opinion Podcast. And don't forget to follow Lily at
Upcycled by Lils on Poshmark, TikTok, and Instagram. And don't forget to follow Maya
at Maya Roffler on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
We'll see you back here next time.